Hey, good evening and welcome to the show. This is Freedom Speech and You, and I'm your host, Ken Otto, and we're happy to have you here. We're happy to welcome TV2 Live, ADM FLA GURL 38, Aaron West, Nick Ridge 56, and Wes Webb, and M. Besler, and Casper Northerner. So good to have all of you here. Okay, we're going to settle right in and get to the show since we are an hour behind the usual time and 45 minutes behind the usual delayed time due to family Zoom, but couldn't be helped. Okay, so here we go, right with the topics. So Biden spoke today on the 58th anniversary of Sunday Bloody Sunday, or Bloody Sunday as it's sometimes called. I'm used to it being called Sunday Bloody Sunday on account of the YouTube song, which memorializes what happened. And so Biden spoke on this occasion today, and let's just get right into it. So get my mouse oriented here.
Joe Biden.
Folks out there. Hey, buddy, how are you? Selma's here. Well, before I be, please have a seat if you have one. I once said that, have a seat, have one, and the press said they don't have seats. He's so stupid he didn't know that. Those folks make.
So you can imagine that the other side of the aisle is going to say something about his demeanor and him walking over to the side like that and waving to somebody. They'll take that clip out of context for sure.
That might not happen back there, but you all do here. Folks, look, there's a lot to say. I'm going to try not to say very much in terms of length of time, but I want to say a few things. It was mentioned that we should be working for the people of Africa. For years, I was chairman of the African Affairs Subcommittee of the United States Senate, and we've invested. My wife just got back from Zambia and Namibia. She's there all the time. We just made sure we have billions of dollars committed to build Africa, and Goal is going to have the largest solar facility in all of Africa. We're investing in Africa because Africa is important and because everything happening there will affect us. So, folks, that's number one. Number two, I want to make sure that, I've told the mayor, I think mayors being the toughest job in America. But one of the mayors who took some time to come and help me put together my program, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Keisha, would you stand up? From Atlanta. She's understandably going home because she's got some kids and it's about time. She promised she'd stay as long as she did, and she did. But we got another mayor coming too. So anyway, thank you very much, Keisha. And folks, last time I was here, my daughter is a social worker, Ashley Biden, was with me. She couldn't be with me today. She wanted to because she's working on a project for battered women up in Delaware and Philadelphia. So she sends her best. On this stage, the children of God started a journey, walking, not saying a word, beaten, tear gassed. On this bridge, blood was given to help redeem the soul of America. Last time he was here, I was with him, John Lewis. They were his words. Mayor Perkins, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, members of Congress, all of you are here, Charles Maudlin, all of the foot soldiers of Selma, distinguished guests. You were among the final words of our dear friend John Lewis delivered as he stood on the bridge over troubled waters 3 years ago. I had the privilege of standing with him. Words that give meaning to the past and purpose to the future. I've been on this bridge before as vice president, as a candidate for president, and was even before as a senator, because history matters. And now I'm here as your president. The truth matters, notwithstanding what the other team is trying to hide. They're trying to hide the truth. No matter how hard some people try, we can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know. We should learn everything, the good, the bad, the truth of who we are as a nation. And everyone should know the truth of Selma. 600 believers put faith in action to march across that bridge named after the Grand Dragon of the KKK. They're on their way to the state capital of Montgomery to claim their fundamental right to vote, laid in the bedrock of our Constitution, but stolen by hate, harbored in too many hearts. With unflinching courage, foot soldiers for justice marched through the valley of the shadow of death, and they feared no evil. The forces of hate conspired to demise, but they endured. They forced the country to confront the hard truth and to act to keep the promise of America alive. I was a student up north in the civil rights movement. I remember feeling how guilty I was. I wasn't here. How could we all be up there and you going through what you went through, looking at those? I can still picture the troopers with their batons and wands and whips. A promise that declares we're all created and deserve to be treated equally. 2 weeks later, they marched to Montgomery with Dr. King and an even bigger coalition of people from different races and faiths. 5 months later, the Voting Rights Act was signed into law 5 months later. But as I come here in commemoration, not for show, Selma is a reckoning. The right to vote, to have your vote counted, is the threshold of democracy and liberty. With it, anything's possible. Without it, without that right, nothing is possible. And this fundamental right remains under assault. The conservative Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act over the years. Since the 2020 election, a wave of states and dozens of anti-voting laws fueled by the big lie and the election deniers now elected to office. The new law here in Alabama, among other things, enacted a new congressional map that discriminated against black voters by failing to include what should have been a new predominantly black district. That case, as you all know better than I, is in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And my U.S. Department of Justice has joined many of you in arguing that the map violates the Voting Rights Act. All of this after a deadly insurrection on January the 6th. We must remain vigilant. In January, I signed the Electoral Count Reform Act to protect the will of the people and the peaceful transfer of power. We know that we must get the votes in Congress to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. I made it clear I will not let a filibuster obstruct the sacred right to vote, the right of any other right to vote from there. And that's why you follow the words that you all have, the words of Dr. King. He said, give us the ballot, we will place judges on the bench who will do justly. Led by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and more black women appointed to the federal appellate court than every other president in history has done, we're about to do that. After Senate Republicans blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act last year, I did what was in my power. I signed an executive order requiring all the key elements of the bill applied to federal law enforcement. I couldn't make it to states. Banning chokeholds, greatly restricting no-knock warrants, establishing a database for police misconduct, advancing effective and accountable community policing that builds public trust. We'll keep fighting to pass the reform nationwide. Folks, Well, we passed the most significant gun safety law in 30 years. But I'm not ready to stop, nor is Jim Clyburn or anybody else up there ready to stop. I led the effort when I was a senator to pass the assault weapons ban, and we banned assault. We're going to ban assault weapons again. They matter. When we had the ban, fewer people died, fewer mass shootings. And together we're saying loud and clearly that in America, hate and extremism will not prevail, although they are rearing their ugly head in significance now. Silence, as the saying goes, silence is complicity. And I promise you, my administration will not remain silent. I promise you. The task before us is about justice, but it's also about jobs, financial stability, the ability to generate generational wealth. It's about hope, self-worth. It's about dignity. That's why we're building an economy that I've been very significantly criticized for, but I make no apologies, that grows the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy. We were a typical middle-class family with a 3-bedroom home and 4 kids and a grandpa living with us. I don't remember anything trickling down from on my dad's kitchen table, the trickle-down economic problem. Because when we do that, we build from the middle out, the bottom up. The poor have a ladder up. The middle class does very well, and the wealthy still do well. We all do well. But we know there's work to do, especially as you recover from this devastating tornado and the storms that hit in January. That's why, working with Terry and the mayor, I issued a major disaster declaration immediately, committing the federal government to cover 100% of the debris removal. We also are paying for temporary housing, home repairs, supporting local businesses, small businesses, as well as doing in other towns devastated as you have been. To date, we provided $8 million in recovery, and we're just getting started the rebuilding effort. And we'll be here as long as it takes. The first major bill we passed without a single vote from the other team was the American Rescue Plan when I was sworn in. That has provided $60 million to Selma and Dallas County directly. One of the things, having been a county official for 2 years, I learned a long time ago, I didn't like anything that went through the state legislature. No, I'm not joking. Good people, but they all want a piece of it. If it's supposed to come to my county, it better damn well come to my county directly. So this is going directly to your county, directly to your city, to keep teachers, nurses, police officers, firefighters on the job. Selma's also benefited from the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is a multi-billion-dollar commitment to rebuild this country. How can we be the leading economy in the world if we don't have the best roads, ports, and so on? How can we be that? Well, guess what? It's the largest investment in infrastructure since Eisenhower's interstate highway system. Here in Selma, we're funding major water projects, removing over 800 poisonous lead pipe service lines that are over 100 years old, because every child should be able to turn on a faucet and drink clean water without fear of getting sick. And it's going to deliver affordable high-speed internet to every single home in this county and this city. And no parent, God forbid another pandemic, is going to have to sit in the McDonald's parking lot to use their internet to be able to have their kids' homework be done. Look, and in the process, these kinds of investments are going to create good-paying jobs. Most of these jobs don't require college degrees. They'll be able to hire here, hire in your community. And by the way, the unemployment rate for African Americans under my administration is the second lowest it's ever been in all of American history. And we're going to continue to make sure that happens. And by the way, I'm the only president I've learned that had permanent offices in the White House for the Divine Nine and the HBCUs. I figured it out, man. I figured it out. Now I know that the vice president thinks that Howard's the best. Delaware State University, where I come from, But all kidding aside, we've contributed billions of dollars to put HBCUs in the position because they don't have, I mean it seriously, billions of dollars. They don't have the kind of trust funds that the major schools have. So guess what? Leaves out an awful lot of qualified African Americans at HBCUs from learning how to deal with cybersecurity, learn how to deal with all the stuff of the future. Guess what? Right now they have that, and I'm able, as a president of the United States, to award these contracts directly there because they have the lab. I'm serious. It's a big deal. There's a lot more we're doing for Selma and cities like it all across America. When I passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which again, the other team didn't participate at all, which allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices for the first time. Do you realize in America, we pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world? Hear me? More. And I've been fighting this for the last 25 years, but guess what? We finally beat Big Pharma. So now, oh man, you have no idea how good I felt about that one. Because what's happened? What happened is now Medicare can say, we are not going to pay you more than $35 instead of $400 for that insulin that you need. And guess what that means? Not only it reduced prices for people who need help, but it reduces the federal budget by $158 billion. You know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. In addition to that, when we reduce the cost of insulin for seniors on Medicare, we got a commitment initially, I proposed, that we reduce for anybody needing that insulin. Well, guess what? The other team voted that down too. But along came the largest maker of insulin in the country. They, as they said, seen the Lord. They saw light. And here's the deal, I'm not kidding. Eli Lilly, one of the biggest drug makers of insulin, they just announced they're going to cap the cost of all their insulin at $35. And guess what that means? No other company going to be able to charge more than that because no one's going to buy it. For everyone else with diabetes, that's going to help 500,000 folks in Alabama today are on this. And it's going to reduce the price from somewhere between $400 and $600 a month to $35 a month. So let's finish the job. Lower the price for everyone, including the 200,000 children with type 1 diabetes across this country. But there's more work to do. We'll protect Social Security and Medicare, and we'll protect, by the way, did you see that State of the Union address? I said, it means all you guys are against cutting Medicare and Social Security. Oh, yeah. Well, in my religion, we go, bless me, Father. That's a wonderful thing. Look, Medicaid is critically important to people that are having trouble making it. And the Affordable Care Act, we increased the available money by $800 for those folks. We're going to make sure we protect those too to make sure they get the care they need. Look, we need to reward work, not just wealth, because the idea, we used to have about 670 billionaires in America. Now we have about 1,000. You realize they pay a lower tax rate than your police officers or the people driving that ambulance? They pay a lower tax rate than hard-working folks. I think you should be able to make $1 trillion. Just pay your fair share, Jack. No, I mean it. And by the way, we'll also cut the deficit when we have them begin to pay their fair share. Look, with Terry's leadership, let's make sure working parents in Selma and across the country have a living wage. There should be sick days available, paid family and medical leave. We're the only country in the nation in the world that doesn't have it. Affordable child care and elder care. It saves money. Let's restore the full child tax credit. And by the way, that cut black child poverty in half and gave tens of millions of parents some breathing room, including almost 1 million folks in Alabama. I was telling the mayor on the way over, my dad is a hardworking guy, a real gentleman, a decent man. He never got a college degree. He never got to go to college. It was a great regret he had. But you know what he used to say for real? I'm sorry I always quote my dad, but it's worth saying. He'd say, Joey, remember, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your decency. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. It's so easy to make that happen without any fundamental changes. But they're not letting us up to now. With HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge. Marcia, you're here, right? There you go. She's my Secretary of Housing and Urban Affairs. Look, she's leading the way on housing discrimination and affordable quality housing. My message to you is this. We see you. We're fighting to make sure no one's left behind. This is a time of choosing, and we need everybody engaged. We know history does not look kindly on those who deny the march across the bridge to redeem the soul of America. Let me close with this. In many of your faith traditions, Sunday is the Sabbath, the day of rest. But on that Sunday morning of March 7th, 1965, Amelia Boynton Robinson and 600 of her fellow children of God chose different pews. On this bridge of her beloved Selma, they were called to the altar of democracy. Unsure of their fate, but certain of the cause was righteous. So she would go on to say, quote, you can never know where you're going unless you know where you've been. We know where we have been. My fellow Americans, on this Sunday of our time, we know where we've been, and we know, more importantly, where we have to go. Forward, together. So let's pray, but let's not rest. Let's keep marching. Let's keep the faith. But most of all, let's remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. So let's go and finish the job. God bless you all, and may God bless our troops.
So that was his speech today. Really good speech. I watched it for the first time in its entirety with you. You know, I did not pre-watch that. He did touch on a lot of things. You know, some might say that it wasn't related to today, but it certainly is related to today. And you can find his White House press statement on the website. So there's his statement. So you can read that if you want at whitehouse.gov. I won't go through it. I think that showing his speech was enough. And I think that what's important there is that not only did he talk about the history, but he talked about what to do because of the history, what to build upon, what to do about the community, how to improve those people's lives, how that helps people, because the healthy people, the people who can afford their medication and who can afford their taxes, instead of putting all the burden on the people at the lower end and just letting, you know, everybody in those 1,000 people at the top just get away scot-free without paying their fair share of taxes. When you make everybody pay their fair share, you have a better, healthier American people. And by doing that, you have people who have he didn't mention it this way, but you have people who have less of a propensity to want to commit violence or to go commit crimes, which is what the other side always says, you know, well, we can't give people money because all they do is commit violence and commit crimes. Well, you know, you kind of force people's hand in some ways when you don't take care of them, when you make everything too expensive for them. Not saying that's an excuse for anything, but it does does play a factor. So there are a lot of things to talk about. The things that were put in the topics for discussion for tonight and in the official released list of topics. So this is one of them. And this actually is an old article. And I will remove it for a second because the article has a Confederate flag if the video plays. So I'm going to roll that up. The article is actually from 2020. See if I can make the text bigger. I'm just going to touch on the topics of the article because this is the source article for something that I saw today. And sorry about that Confederate flag in there. But the article talks about Confederate statues falling and the changes in NASCAR and the Marine Corps banning the display of the rebel flag and the change of the name of the band now known as Lady A. And it talks about the darkest chapters of American history and former plantations and how those still beckon tourists because people want to know, what goes on, what went on a plantation. And the article says, but those who think their plantation visit will be focused on China collections and lush gardens may be in for a surprise. More of the estates have recast themselves to starkly portray the evils of slavery. And this is what I saw in the story that I saw this morning. I believe it was on CBS because I was tuning around. Some it says, such as McLeod Plantation in Charleston, South Carolina, or Whitney Plantation near Wallace, Louisiana, put their focus on the lives of enslaved people. They show the interiors of the quarters of the enslaved people in sharp contrast to the luxury of the plantation owners' houses. They have, in effect, become museums to Black suffering. And of course, this article was written in 2020. So it's talking about the death of George Floyd, at the Minneapolis police officer. And it's talking about other things that have happened more recently. How that unleashed a wave of resentment when it comes to symbols, relics, or monuments. Although the wave of resentment has been there already, it just really brought that to more people. How those things stand in the way of equality for Black Americans. And how some of these plantations now serve as things that work toward education. Bernard Powers, director for the Center of Study of Slavery in Charleston at the College of Charleston, said the following: I'm convinced that they have a very valuable role to play in society. I've seen them evolve over several decades. So he's talking about the plantations. And I recall, as my own personal experience, the first time that I heard about slavery and the Confederate flag and saw what the war was about, that really opened my eyes as a young teen or a preteen. When he first visited plantations in the area in the 1970s, Powers said the focus was to meet mansion tours and lush lives of the estate owners. Yes, this has always been the kind of thing that they've been known for. And nobody referred to the Black workers as slaves or enslaved people, but rather as servants. So they made them seem more like something, made them seem more like something of just a worker in the house. somebody hired to work there, not somebody enslaved to work there. And this article doesn't talk about it, but the report that I watched this morning, when the lady that conducts the actual tours in South Carolina was talking, she was talking about the fact that with the host of the show, the fact that you have these classic films. In fact, it might have been the narrator of the show that was saying this, but you have all these classic films that, like Gone with the Wind, for instance, that depict the life of the slave is like something of, just a member of the family. So, I mean, because you look at that film, if you've never seen that film, go watch Gone with the Wind. It's a classic. But you look at that film, and I believe the character's name is Mamie. I'll get corrected if I'm wrong. You look at that film and you see the way that things are going, and okay, that's something from the producer. You look at that film and you see the way things are going, and it seems like Mamie, if I'm getting her character name correctly, like she's just an aide to the principal character of the story. Like she is more like a grandmotherly figure. And the life of slaves was not like that at all. And so what you're seeing now that in the past few years, these tours are changing, and one of these places we mentioned earlier was the McLeod Plantation. So let me get the So this is the website for the McLeod Plantation. You see it's part of, if you can see that little logo, and if you can't, I'll make it bigger, because I don't know what size screen you're looking at. So I'll make it bigger. And you see the logo there. It's a part of the Charleston County Parks. So it's actually sponsored by the county. Now, I made it. There's the website. Yeah, there's all this stuff on it. But let me expand it again and see if, with the ads out of the way, if I put the mouse where I need to put it, you can see the houses that the actual slaves lived in. These one-room houses that, and I've been in a house like this. Good evening, Elizabeth. Welcome. I've been in a house like this because houses like this exist in Florida as well. So I can tell you exactly what a house like this looks like on the inside without actually seeing the house like this on the inside. I can be fairly confident about that. What a house like this looks like on the inside is nothing more than the four walls on the outside. So when you walk in this house, it's a bit bigger than than that add-on little house that some people put behind their house that they make their office or they're dead, or their parents' house. And when you walk in this house, you can see there, you got a chimney. But I guarantee you, I will bet you $1 that you can walk into that house and you will see an exposed restroom with no door on it, no walls, no partition. Because what you probably had there was you had a house. And that's assuming that plumbing was actually in the house at the time. But I've seen a house like this in Florida that was in an orange grove that you walked in and there you are. I mean, you're eating, sleeping, restroom, all in one room, no partitions between it, just a place to put down your head at night, quarters, and that's it. So yeah, like Wes says, curtain. You'd have to now pull a curtain up. But yeah, I mean, that's what you had for a house. It just a servant, what they call a servant in the old vernacular of the plantation, but what we really call an enslaved person. Good evening, Rosebud. Yes, it looks like a row of sheds, doesn't it? I mean, it really is not much more than a shed that some people put behind their house to put their stuff in. Yep. It would qualify as a tiny house. So culturally, besides the view of this house, I don't know that this gets into it, but the video that I watched, so let's see if they even talk about it. Well, they talk about interpretive tours. So they talk about that. I don't know. But they basically take you through things. And they take you through things. And so on a first come, first served basis, the guides present theme tours that include but are not limited to Sea Island cotton cultivation and processing. I'm going to say this right, Gullah and Geechee culture, and organized and individual resistance to slavery and its legacy. Because a lot of people didn't know this, but you always hear about cotton being in Texas and certain places in the South. I mean, you hear about cotton being in the South when you go through history class. But these people worked on cotton and stuff. And the other thing that you would learn on this tour is that you would learn that these people brought with them their own culture, and they brought with them their way and style of cooking, and that the Southern cooking that everybody knows the area for is really their culture and their cooking. So it was what they had to do to take the scraps that they got as a slave and turn it into something decent that they could eat. So when you talk about things like soul food and soul food, and that style of cooking, that's where it came from. The other thing that you learn on the tour that was mentioned in the video that I watched this morning was, I mean, obviously you're going to learn all this timeline. So Native American tribes inhabited James Island as early as 600 BC. The cloud oak sprouts approximately 1000 AD. And then it goes through the timeline of when the acreage was sold to the owner, and who it passed through, and so on and so forth, and in the Civil War Reconstruction, all of that sort of thing. I mean, it's all there, the timeline. But what really, really fascinated me was what the tour guide was saying was these people were enslaved. They could not get away from being enslaved. I'm sure that some of them tried and did succeed to get away, or they were killed in the process, because that's what you can learn there. But they were at least somewhat happy to know that they lived near a place with water, because in their culture, being able to have their remains scattered on the water meant that the waters could carry them back to where they wanted to be. And that was the one thing that they found peace in, is that they lived near water. And if they could not escape and get back home, then they could at least have their spirit get back home. So that was very, very important to me. And that's why I added this to the story. It's not the only place. There is another place, at least that's mentioned. I think there's actually 3 in that article. But these are the ones that were more predominant in regard to telling the actual slave story. So this is the other place. It's called the Whitney Plantation. And where is this? But this has different levels of tours. It has a self-guided tour or a guided tour. It has education tours for the 5th through 12th grade students, or tours for large groups. And where is it again? I looked at it earlier. It's probably in the contact information. That's probably the quickest way. Okay, this one is in Louisiana. So this one is in Louisiana Highway. I'm gonna imagine that that's where it is. Yeah. Yep, that's on the map. So it's on the Louisiana Highway 18 at 5099 in Edgard, Louisiana, Edgard. So there's a different one in Louisiana if that happens to be closer to you, or if you find yourself on occasion to visit both. But I just sincerely thought that was a good thing to talk about. So, next topic. Your little brother lived in a 4-square house in Kentucky where the plumbing emptied into the fields. Elizabeth said they actually sang songs that filled with directions to the underground. Yes. They sang songs to lift their spirits, and they sang songs to pass on the information so that, they could hide within the song the information about how to get away. The ingenuity of the people. This is a topic of discussion that was on the morning shows today. I know that they talked about this on Drawing a blank on the name. Hang on one second. Meet the Press on NBC. This is not the NBC coverage of it. This is the Hill's coverage of it. So what's going on right now is Biden has the student loan forgiveness plan, and about 1.6 million people in Florida are really wanting this plan. People have signed up in multiple states, not just Florida. And what the Hill is talking about is, and what they talked about on what they talked about on Meet the Press was what to do if the student loan forgiveness is struck down, because the Supreme Court is considering it, whether it can be held to be constitutional or not. And like as I said, people have already applied for it. So there's going to be a lot of dissatisfied people if it doesn't go through. Now, I don't know what they say on this video. So let's see what they say. And let's see if we can get that to play full screen. And and I'm not sure who this broadcaster is. Come on, where's my? I guess it won't let me pause it. Okay, there's another way to get to the desired point, and that's to go to the end of the video.
Justification, but we will have to see, and we'll have more Rising right after this.
So I hope Rising doesn't mind if I use their video. Well, there was. Let's see. I guess we can try to replay it now. See if that works. And unfortunately, it went to something else. So I get to reload the page. So can we get it to reload the page, or we're just going to not do the video?
Student loan debt relief plan is on the chopping block. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court will hear arguments about whether his proposal to forgive up to $20,000 in debt belonging to qualifying borrowers is constitutional. Now, the administration says that Education Secretary Miguel Cardona has full authority under the HEROES Act to forgive the debt.
So the HEROES Act was passed after 9/11, and it gave the Education Secretary the power to waive or tweak federal student financial assistance programs in times of war or national emergency. Former President Trump began using this measure at the onset of the pandemic, but President Biden then expanded it. So what do you think, Robbie?
Well, so you and I are both, very skeptical and opposing of the student debt forgiveness plan. Brianna, our other co-host, is very, very, very supportive of it. But I think even she concedes that the HEROES Act argument is not very compelling for the rationale to be able to do this. And she would point to, she thinks it is perfectly constitutional, but she would point to other laws that she thinks gives the executive the power to do that. The problem with the HEROES Act is that it was clearly just not designed to cover this sort of circumstance. It was about forgiving loan debt for veterans or for people who are answering the call to serve America in the wars on terror. Also, even if we're reading HEROES Act to have the kind of emergency that would include a pandemic, the pandemic is over. Joe Biden said the words, the pandemic is over. So how would he still have the authority to do this if we're not in that emergency anymore? So it was really a very bad justification. And actually, I think there are some on the left who support student debt relief who think Biden chose this, who kind of have a very anti-Biden mindset and think he was deliberately sabotaging this by using this justification because it's not going to hold up in the Supreme Court. But I guess we'll have to see. I don't like the policy, so I would be happy to see it defeated by whatever means, and I don't think the HEROES Act covers it. But what are you expecting to see from the Supreme Court justices?
Well, I think Brianna has made a very convincing argument that this was designed to fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether you like it or not, she makes the argument that you can't give Biden credit for being a progressive for having done this, because he did it in a way where it was designed to fail so that he wouldn't then have to take responsibility for the political fallout. And I think she's done a great job of substantiating that argument. I don't know. I couldn't say which way the Supreme Court is going to go, but just again, I think if they had limited it to Americans who started college and now work in the service industry, right? There are, about 10% of service industry workers have some college under their belt, right? These are people who are making, 20.
Okay, so they're kind of like the TYT crowd, I guess, in this video. They think that Biden simply planned to fail, like said, well, I just put this out there. And gee, folks, I tried, but it sadly it didn't pass because of the Republicans. And I don't think that way. I think that he really is sincere about trying to get this legislation passed, and I obviously disagree with them. Let's hear what else they had to say, though.
30, $50,000, $60,000 a year and paying student loans, right? I think a lot of Americans feel for people like that who tried to go the college route, it didn't work out, and now are stuck without the benefit of a college degree, but while paying those loans. I think a lot of Americans, including myself, have a lot of sympathy for people stuck in that situation. The people we don't have sympathy for are people who are also would be counted under this for forgiveness, who are at the beginning of what is going to turn into an extremely lucrative career, making $75,000 a year, right? Beginning of, maybe they are a law clerk, right? Maybe they are, in their first job as an accountant, right? Even somebody like a dental hygienist, right, who might have some student loan, right? But they're going to be making good money at some point. And for those people to get a bailout from
so she's
working class
arguing
Americans,
for the
from all those
so-called
service industry
good
workers
money
who didn't get the benefit of a college.
So it sounds like, she's worked her way through and she's, got good money. She's just not in support of that. So that, having played that video sight unseen, that's not what I was hoping to see. I'm wondering if the whole article is like that. So let's see. Is the whole article like that? Because I should probably think I thought the Hill was supposed to be moderately biased, like in the middle. I'll have to look at the bias of the Hill. I know we've used it before and it didn't seem like it was biased one way or the other. So let's see what the article says. And the video is popping up in there. Can't really get rid of, can I get rid of the video? No, I can't get rid of the video. Okay, so I'll have to just sort of read around it. Biden White House reluctant to talk about alternatives to its student loan relief plan for fear of undermining its case now before the Supreme Court, but should the justices strike down the proposal, they do have options. So lawyers for administration made their case to save Biden's student debt forgiveness before the justices on Tuesday, but with the plan at the mercy of conservative-leaning court, eyes are on the administration for what comes next. Biden said, "I'm confident we're on the right side of law. I'm not confident about the outcome of the decision yet." Goes into the fact that this was one of his top promises of the 2020 campaign and what amount of debt he intended to eliminate. Observers knew the proposal would be challenged legally, and it quickly became the subject of multiple lawsuits. No surprise there, because the Republicans are not for it. But the Biden administration tried to maintain an optimistic tone and hasn't backed off from it. The plan we put forward in August is the plan we have, which is also the plan you heard the Solicitor General really defend in a strong and powerful way yesterday. And that's our plan. And we believe in our legal authority to get that done and get that implemented, said Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on Wednesday, adding that Education Secretary Miguel Cardona had reached out to borrowers this week to let them know the White House has their back. She continued, our focus right now is getting this done. You saw the Solicitor General really give a strong argument yesterday in front of the highest court in the land. There's a reason we took it to the Supreme Court. The president's most viable alternative is to use a new executive action, possibly backed by leading Democrats, including Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren, which she tweeted about 5 or 6 hours ago in support of this. She tweeted that that's something that former President Trump did, enables Biden to do the same thing to pass this legislation. That may be what they were talking about. So let's see what she tweeted. Let me get Twitter up. I knew I was going to end up having to do that. Elizabeth Warren. Oh, I should have tagged it. Maybe I did though. Did I tag Elizabeth Warren? I don't think so though, because I don't have one that says that. But I know I read it, and I knew I should have tagged it. So it's got to be there, because it was just, of course, like usual, you see these tweets and then poof, it's like they disappear. So let's go through those and maybe see if it's right there, because it seemed like it was just up there. Really, really, really gets me that I didn't listen to my internal voice and just mark that. I mean, there's a tweet that she has, but it's different than the one I'm looking for. Interesting. Well, in a different tweet, she says, She says, I'm on my way to the Supreme Court as the arguments begin on President Biden's plan to cancel student debt. POTUS legal authority is clear and the court should apply the law, not play politics. Republican officials are holding up relief for millions of hardworking Americans. So I wonder if it was a reply, and that's why I'm not seeing it. Interesting. Unless she deleted the tweet because of what people wrote on it, because there were some very unkind things written on it. So she could have deleted the tweet, which is possible. Anyway, she supported him because she said that something that former President Trump had did in order to pass some of his executive orders paved the way for Biden to use it. Schumer, Warren, and other Democrats called on Biden to use authority under Higher Education Act to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt for all borrowers. 1965 law allows for student loan relief for certain groups, including those institutions that have since closed. Yeah, I mean, like, place goes out of business, you still owe them money, and you never got your education, you never finished your education. You really should have something. Congress has granted Secretary of Education the legal authority to broadly cancel student debt under Section 432A of Higher Education Act 1965, 20 USC 1082A, which gives the Secretary the authority to modify, compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however required, including inequity or any right of redemption, the Democrats wrote. And a former senior policy advisor in the education department of Bush suggested that the administration could try to defend its current plan under the HEA as opposed to the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students or HEROES Act, which is cited before the Supreme Court. That would be Robert Moran. Moran said the administration may return to some of its arguments proposed under HEA to provide this relief. If that happens, I'm sure there will be another series of court cases that will likely end back at the Supreme Court. But he added he doesn't personally think that HEA grants Biden the authority to enact loan forgiveness and not sure what is available to the administration to provide the relief. So he's basically saying just try to do this. It'll delay it in the courts. I don't know that they could proceed with it in the courts, though they probably can't. And other options to try to get Congress to do it, but that's very unlikely with a Republican-held Congress in the House. There was something that a 1.9 trillion coronavirus stimulus package in 2021, which included a provision that made it so student debt relief would be tax-free if it occurred. But Deborah Dixon said, congressional action's always an option, but the short answer, there's no quick fix. She's a former chief of staff of the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development at the Education Department under President Obama. Lawmakers and activists plan to keep pressure on the administration. Representative Robert Garcia, Democrat, California, said, I think there's going to be an uproar across the country, in particular our college campuses, and folks working really hard to get it done. These activists are going to continue to organize and will continue to try to address the issue with Congress. Representative Maxwell Frost also said no when asked if there will be a legislative path forward if the court knocks down the Biden plan. So he doesn't see the Republicans assisting them in doing this. He says, we'll need to do this because of the numbers right now, the majority. So that we'll need to do is we'll need the president to try something else. Apart from complete debt cancellation, Biden administration's work to make its student loan borrowers have an easier time repaying their student loans once payments resume after pandemic-related pause. Under the proposals they've made are changes to lower payments, paying back a certain amount each month, and after 20 to 25 years, the debt would be forgiven. And it goes into numeric values. So they're doing their best. But obviously, it's a difficult prospect with Republicans controlling the House. So, I'm saving all the Trump stuff for the end, or near the end. Where are we? We're through the first tower. Okay. A Florida bill would require bloggers who write about the governor to register with the state. So let's read that article. This is from March 2nd and updated on March 3rd. Florida Senator Jason Broder of Lake Mary, who really shouldn't be in office, given the circumstances under which he was elected, because he is the guy that was a candidate in a race that had a fake candidate, which drew votes away from the other viable candidate, the Democrat. And I don't know if I can get this out of my way. Let's see. Okay, good. Wants bloggers who write about Governor DeSantis, Attorney Ashley Moody, and other members of the Florida Executive Cabinet or legislature to register with the state or face fines. So basically, they want fascism. No free press, no freedom of speech. Broder's proposal, Senate Bill 1316, information dissemination, will require any blogger writing about the government officials to register with the Florida Office of Legislative Services or the Commission on Ethics. Now, I have to say, if you want to do that, then let's register every single one of the PACs that run commercials for either party. And let's see who they are. You should not be able to hide behind something, which we know this one is Save America PAC. We know that's Trump and his people. But there's plenty of PACs that say this statement about some political candidate, and they have no rules that make them tell the truth, not even the truth that they believe themselves. And they can hide behind the name of a PAC. So if you're going to make every blogger register about talking about elected officials, then you should make every PAC register so I can see who they are. You ain't going to do that. So you ain't going to do this either. In the bill, Broder wrote that Those who write an article, a story, a series of stories about these cabinet officials and the governor and receive payment for doing so must register with state offices within 5 days after the publication of an article that mentions a state elected official. And if another blog post is added to a blog, the blogger would then be required to submit monthly reports. Again, fascism. Good evening, Benny Loco. On the 10th of the month with an appropriate state office, they would not have to submit a report on months when no content is published. Again, pure fascism. For blog posts that contain a certain elected member of the legislature, officer of the executive branch, monthly reports must disclose the amount of compensation received for the coverage, rounded to the nearest $10 value. So now they want to know how much money you make doing this. If compensation is paid for a series of posts or a specific amount of time, the blogger would be required to disclose the total amount received upon publication of the first post in said series or time frame. Geez Louise, why not just ask where the money is coming from too while you're at it? Failure to file these disclosures or register with state officials if the bill passes would lead to daily fines for the bloggers with a maximum amount per report, not per writer, of $2,500. The per day fine is $25 per report for each day it's late. And they have to file notices of failure to file a timely report. The same way that lobbyists file their disclosures and reports on assessed fines. Fines must be paid within 30 days of payment notice unless an appeal is filed with the appropriate office. Fine payments will be deposited in the Legislative Lobbyist Registration Fund. So they're basically treating you like a lobbyist, even if you're just writing. I wonder, like, are they going to make me pay for doing this show? Because I talk about DeSantis. This is one reason why your host does not accept any compensation at all whatsoever. So, to this policy. It doesn't apply to newspapers or similar publications. So it sounds like he's trying to ensure that newspaper can still sell because he's trying to do that. He's trying to say that bloggers who make money and sit on their own computers and don't have to sell newspapers, which half the time people that are bloggers that are actually making money are people that were fired from newspapers because hardly nobody buys a newspaper anymore. And when you do buy a newspaper, it's smaller than it's ever been and has a whole lot less in it for your dollar. In addition to blogger regulation, the bill removes provisions of state statutes that require judicial notices of sales to be published on publicly accessible websites, and specifies that government agency can publish legally required advertisements and public notices on county sites if the cost is not paid or recovered from an individual. So they're kind of like removing, also putting official notices on websites too. on what usually would have been a state website. I don't know if this video is this what it's called? Digital Bill of Rights proposal? Then there's another thing on here about union due collections. Is that the one where they're trying to bust up the unions? Legislature proposal to change how union dues and fees are collected for public employees, but does not apply to unions for law enforcement, correctional officers, probation officers, or firefighters. Applies to teachers unions and some nurses unions if their employees work for state agencies. Union membership is not required as a condition of employment for any of the organizations the bill mentions. He's taken issue, the governor's taken issue with the politicization of schools through teachers' unions and proposed changing how union dues and fees are collected to put more control in teachers' hands. What do you call what you're doing, Ron DeSantis? You're politicizing everything to do with this school every single day, saying you can't do this, you can't do that. Just every day living in this state with this governor is a pain. Okay, those are there. Let me see what my producer sent. So let's see what we have here. This is interesting video because I really want to hold off Trump in case y'all want to disappear when I start talking about Trump and his stuff. So let's see what this is about.
Plantation.
Who is Martha Washington? Who is Martha Washington?
His wife.
Under your bill, how could you mention that in a classroom?
So to me, that's not sexual orientation.
Really? So it's only really certain sexual orientations that you want prohibited from introduction in the
Do you have
classroom.
language to make that better, to make it where you're not talking?
Lady, I didn't introduce your bill.
Okay.
Which sexual orientations do you believe should be prohibited from Missouri classrooms?
I'll have a moral compass. And my moral compass is compared with the Bible. You can believe something without putting that onto somebody.
I'm asking about the language of your bill and how it would permit the mention of the historical figure Martha Washington. Could you explain that to me?
So why is she famous? Is she famous because she's married to George Washington?
It seems like that would be a relevant fact in her biography, yes. Could it be mentioned under the plain reading language of your bill? Is that a no?
I don't know, sir.
Okay. What about, are you familiar with the historical figure Harvey Milk?
No, I'm not.
The first openly gay elected councilman in San Francisco, first openly gay elected politician in the country. He was never mentioned, I guess, in any of your classrooms. Do you believe that that story should ever be told in a Missouri classroom?
I have no idea, gentlemen, because I don't know his story.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Oberfell decision?
No, I am not.
So you're not very familiar with any part of history anyway. And yes, Embezzler, I agree with your statement. How dare someone claiming to represent the people allow their moral compass based on one religion govern a state with dozens of religions? And not only that, Constitution says Congress shall make no law endorsing a specific religion. Not the exact words, close enough. Congress shall make no law. That pertains to the U.S. Congress. When you form a state, you base the formation of the state within the United States on the Constitution. Your state constitution should match that. When you form a principality, a city, whatever, you're supposed to base it on the same. So the idea that your religion should define how I or anyone else defines themselves is an abomination to the Constitution itself. That's a very good one from our producer. Thank you very much. And thank you to Marcia House who retweeted that. We have a Glenn Kirshner video. We have a couple of substitutions coming in from our viewers. We have a lot of it about space. We have Trump. So I'm going to go to the Glenn Kirshner video because. Okay, I'm not going to bother to expand it because I'm going to go to the YouTube video immediately. But what the tweet says is, to absolutely no one's surprise, Donald Trump announces he will continue to run for the presidency, even if he's criminally indicted, and we all know why. And this is a video from Justice Matters, who is completely and totally responsible for this video and who will take
friends,
credit.
we now have an
well
answer to
deserved.
the question, what will Donald Trump do once he's indicted?
And I'm going to go directly to the YouTube video so that I can give you a full screen presentation without the banners. Did that? Oops.
Horse himself. Let's talk.
I'm going to restart it.
Answer to the question, what will Donald Trump do once he's indicted? And we have that answer right from the mouth of the orange horse himself. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Donald Trump has now directly addressed the question of what he will do once he's indicted. Here is the new reporting from the New York Times. Headline, Trump says he would stay in 2024 race if indicted. Donald Trump said he wouldn't even think about dropping out of the race for White House if he's indicted. Because, of course, why would he do anything for the good of the country? That article begins, former President Donald Trump said on Saturday that he would not drop out of the 2024 presidential race if he was indicted in one of several investigations he's facing. Mr. Trump made the comments to a group of conservative media before his speech to the Conservative Political Action Coalition Conference in National Harbor, Maryland. It was the first time Mr. Trump spoke publicly about how he would respond if he was indicted while actively seeking the presidency. Mr. Trump is facing 2 state investigations, one in New York City and one in Fulton County, Georgia, as well as 2 federal investigations led by Jack Smith, a special prosecutor. Mr. Smith is investigating Mr. Trump's attempt to thwart the peaceful transfer of power after losing the 2020 election, as well as Mr. Trump's possession of hundreds of classified documents and presidential material at his private club, Mar-a-Lago. Mr. Trump was definitive when asked Saturday whether he would stay in the race if one of the prosecutors brought an indictment. Quote, "Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't even think about leaving," close quote, he said, adding that he believed an indictment would increase his poll numbers. Of course, this comes as absolutely no surprise. Let's start by stating the obvious. Donald Trump ran for re-election in 2020 to stay out of prison because our Department of Justice has a stupid, democracy-damaging policy that says we can't indict a sitting criminal president. So naturally, Trump had to run for re-election in 2020 to stay out of prison. I actually think one of the reasons Trump tried so desperately to steal the 2020 election is because he believed he would be arrested upon leaving office. And frankly, that would be a reasonable belief. Remember those 10 obstruction of justice felony crimes Donald Trump committed that were meticulously documented by Bob Mueller in the Trump-Russia report? Remember when Bob Mueller testified that Donald Trump can be indicted upon leaving office? You know, I think Donald Trump and all of America, at least those of us who care about the rule of law, believe that was precisely what happened. Donald Trump would be charged for his crimes. You know, friends, I don't think Donald Trump ever dreamed that 2 years and 2 months after he left office, he would be unindicted, footloose, and fancy-free, playing golf and running once again for the presidency of the United States. So, friends, on the one hand, I remain optimistic that indictments will come. But on the other hand, you know, I am shocked, I am saddened, I am sickened that there has not been one overt law enforcement act 2 years and 2 months later to hold Donald Trump accountable for even a single one of his crimes. You know, law enforcement acts instantly and overtly when it's a poor man, when it's a person of color, when it's someone with no power, no influence, no connections, when someone like that snatches a purse, sells a rock of crack or a bag of dope, steals a deodorant stick from CVS. Oh yeah, law enforcement acts instantly and overtly to hold those folk accountable. And let's state this sad truth. It is the lack of overt, timely law enforcement action when it comes to the ruling class criminals violating the law that allows and feeds America's moral decline, as epitomized by Donald Trump being in a position to run for high government office yet again. You know, friends, the indictments quite literally can't come soon enough. because justice matters.
Thank you, Glenn Kirshner. That is Glenn Kirshner's content. That is his show, Justice Matters. Please check out his content. Go to hashtag Team Justice on social media. He is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You'll find him out there. You'll find him on YouTube. Check him out. He, as many of us already know, is a very good source of legal information. And I will not begin at this hour to try to mention his title, but I'm sure that our mods can shoot you information if you still can't find him. He is Glenn, GLENN KIRSCHNER 2 on Twitter. So check that out. Check out all of his content because all of it is just as good as that. Okay. I will save the space stuff for the end. Let me read. I'll have to look those up. Mark that as unread. Remember to go fewer topics and save the space stuff for the end. Time to get to Trump. Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. What's the deal with my camera? I see it sparkling. It's probably where I'm sitting or the way the lights are twisted. What's my fade on? That makes it worse. That makes it better. Is that better? Maybe that's better. Maybe I'll stop seeing the sparkle. Okay, good. Better. Oh, this is the thing that got me started on Trump. I saw this video and this really got me started. He's obviously going to be analyzed by a lot of our liberal talkers on the left. We're going to talk a lot about what Trump said at CPAC, but this is the one that got me started. So let's go to this one. Fine, sharing tab here. So this is the one.
I just drove through Washington, D.C., coming here for the first time in quite a while, and the roads and highways were littered with trash like I've never seen before. It looked like somebody just took their garbage and just threw it all over the highways, the Beltway. It's so disgraceful, so disgusting. I always made it a point as president when I saw the highways were dirty or that the homeless encampments were starting to form to take care of the problem immediately. I used to have people out here all the time sweeping highways, cleaning highways, hosing them down. It bothered me so much. I'm in the beast. I'm being driven back to the White House from some site, and I see this filthy, dirty highway with paper that hasn't been, you could see it's been laying there for months. And I'd have them cleaned up. I wouldn't even call the mayor because it was never going to get done with the mayor. Frankly, the federal government should take over control and management of Washington, D.C. Good project, because it's...
So he thinks that the mayor of Washington, D.C. just lets all the trash just sit there. Just lets the trash sit there. Sorry, I messed with that setting and now I'm playing around with that setting. Maybe that's better. Let's see, is that better? Yeah, it's better. Now my video's not sparkling. Now the other stuff's not sparkling. That's just too distracting. He thinks the mayor of Washington, D.C. does not do the job to clean up things, and that only he can clean up everything, and only he can send out federal employees to go clean up the city of Washington, D.C. When the opposite is true. The city does a good job of cleaning up the mess. That is the city's job. That is those employees' job. He should not be making fun of the people that live there. And if anything, when he comes to town and people follow him, that's when the trash appears, because his people are the people who dump trash all over the place and don't care where they throw it. He is irritating. That's what started me on wanting to talk about him. Now, there's a whole lot more than that. I mean, it's going to take hosts like Hal Sparks a while to go through all of his stuff, because I don't even know how long he talked. I think it was something like 90 minutes or something like that. It's going to take a long time to go through all of that stuff, but you know, let's just stop this. This is another button pusher. Trump muses about Russia blowing up the NATO headquarters is what the title of this one is.
NATO wouldn't even exist if I didn't get them to pay up. But they paid up $449 billion or something, and that's the money they use. They're rich as hell right now. They spent an office building that cost $3 billion. It's like a skyscraper in Manhattan laid on its side. It's one of the longest buildings I've ever seen. And I said, you should have, instead of spending $3 billion, you should have spent $500 million building the greatest bunker you've ever seen, because Russia wouldn't even need an airplane attack. One tank, one shot through that beautiful glass building, and it's gone. Same.
So this is the man who constantly says that the military is so good and the military is so great, and that nobody could get into this country when he's president. And frankly, no one has gotten into this country and destroyed a building since 9/11. And this man has the nerve, the gall, to say that because it's a nice, beautiful, big, long office building and stylish with glass so people can look out of it and see the world outside that they are there to preserve, that it should be a bunker instead. Because supposedly, in his view, in Biden's America, it's not a safe place. They need a bunker to be inside in order to do the UN. And he made no distinction that any of that would change, because he wants his people afraid of World War III. Made no distinction that that would change if he somehow ever got to be the president again. Just build this super bunker because Russia could destroy you. And of course, you know, the next thing he'll come around and say is that he could make Russia stop just by talking to them. But really, dude, you build up the military for 4 fucking years and campaigning before that, and then you turn around and shit on the military and tell them that they can't do the job to keep people away from a building. and you shit on Homeland Security, and you shit on the FBI, and you shit on the CIA, you shit on all of them when you open your mouth, you son of a bitch, because you are, and say those words.
Architect I used in Chicago, great architects, but they didn't have war in mind. But when things happened, that building would be gone in about 15 minutes. They should have spent a $500 million bunker, nice thick ceiling,
So he's saying after he shits on all this stuff, hello, Kelly, and welcome. And by the way, hello. I don't think I said hello to Benny Local, or maybe I did before. And we had some other people slip in here. I've really been motivated to talk about my topics tonight. So I apologize if I haven't said hello to everybody in chat. And he goes and he goes and shits on the building and everything. And then he has the gall to say that he used the same people. So basically he's shitting on his own Trump Towers now because he used the exact same people to design and build them. It's just unbelievable, this man and his stupidity, and the stupidity of anyone who can listen to that bullshit and eat it all up like they're eating their Cheerios in the morning. Excuse me, Cheerios, for even associating your name with this motherfucker.
6 inches, 6 feet of concrete. And by the way, NATO wouldn't even exist if I didn't get them to pay up. But they paid up $440.
NATO wouldn't exist without him and his money. I mean, like somehow NATO was going to go bankrupt if it wasn't for so-called money that he got them to pay. Fucking bullshit. I think I want to go to the status, but first. Not only does he go around shitting on other people and just, you know, all of America is screwed because he's not president in his eyes. It's like, what were we supposed to have been doing for 200 plus years without him? Unfucking believable. Not a single thing he says can you actually believe, other than him saying his name, which, you know, that's like the only thing that he says that's actually true. So he not only shits on all these different people and everything, but now he's going to shit on his chance to avoid prosecution, because here he comes admitting his crimes again.
I was concerned they'd come to the conclusion. I think we have prosecutors now. They don't give a damn if you're guilty. They're looking at me in Atlanta on a perfect phone call. I said, even more perfect than my perfect call to Ukraine. That was a perfect call. This is even more perfect. By the way, where's Hunter? Where is Hunter? Remember? Where's Hunter? I was concerned they'd come to the conclusion. I think we have prosecutors now. They don't give a damn if you're.
So, you know, there he goes shitting on prosecutors because, you know, he's saying I got off scot-free because prosecutors don't care. He is one big, giant, huge turd. This is more of what he had to say about the election. In this one, he claims the election was so bad that instead of Biden serving for 4 years, people he talked to in early 2021 were saying a popular phrase. So let's see. You probably heard it before. Let's go through.
Less. Used to say 4 years. A lot of people said, well, sir, the election was so bad. You'll be in 1 year. A lot of people in this room, you'll be back in 6 weeks, sir. But it's a bad system in many ways, very bad, very dangerous system. Less. Used to say 4 years. A lot of people said, well, sir.
What exactly is the bad system? Is the bad system that you and I can vote and pick our own president? Because that's what it seems like. It seems like he's unhappy that you and I can vote and pick our own president. I think when you see the rest of what he had to say at CPAC, I think you're going to have to get yourself a beverage. This one's yellow, not green, so it really messes up the chroma key when I hold that up to the light. You're going to have to get yourself a strong beverage if that's your passion. Or you're going to have to hope it's 420, or at least you think it's 420, so that you can 420 when he's on. You're certainly going to want somebody that's a comedian, a really good comedian like Al Sparks, to go through all this stuff with you, to make fun of him, to point out in great detail what exactly he's wrong about. But those are just the 4 clips that I picked out of what I saw that I was just like, this is total crazy, beyond all the total crazy that he's done so far. To continue to repeat the lies, to continue to build on the lie, to continue to, sir, you know, you'll be back. Bullshit. The only way that he could have been back in a short period of time is if that coup on January 6th had succeeded and our state of government no longer existed. Time to change the subject. Today is March 5th. We're 3 days away from this happening. This one's on my favorite subject, rockets. Nick's favorite subject out there too. And you can see from the headline, California company sets launch date for world's first 3D printed rocket. No, it's not completely 3D printed, but it does have a lot of its parts printed in 3D printing process. So that's going to be a first. Relativity Space claims its Terran-1 rocket is the largest 3D object ever built, but whether it has the right stuff to survive liftoff remains an open question, is the subtitle. That's what the rocket looks like. I don't know that this article from Gizmodo gets into details about the specifics of the rocket, so I may have to pull that up separately. But they're eager to get their rocket off the ground. It's a California-based company. And they opted to skip the final engine test. Well, that's a surprise, because most rocket manufacturers test the engines. SpaceX calls it a static fire. And they set the inaugural date to be the 8th of March. And it goes up sometime between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. if everything remains on schedule. That's Eastern time. That would be, since we're still in standard time, that would be 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT. That would be 1800 to 2100 in UTC, or military time, sometimes called Zulu time or Z. And for Californians, that would be between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. So, but it's launching here on Florida Space Coast out at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Another thing that's interesting about this launch is that it's launching from Launch Complex 16. Launch Complex 16 hasn't been used in a long time. I'd have to look it up to see specifically last when it was used, but the launch pads that we are typically using lately are 39A for SpaceX, anything with a crew on it. 39A for anything that SpaceX puts up that they end up putting it on that pad because they had another rocket on SLC 40 at Cape Canaveral. So 39A is at Kennedy Space Center. And when Artemis launched, it was on 39B. That's at Kennedy Space Center. And 39A and B, for people that remember the space shuttle, were the two space shuttle pads. 39A and B are also pads that go back to Apollo rockets. I believe it's ULA that launches from SLC 41, and SpaceX, a lot of missions come from SLC 40. 39B is the northernmost one. So the beach that we refer to as Playa Linda Beach, which you access by going to not the northernmost city in our county, but close to it, Titusville. That beach is up there at the north end of the Space Center. And that beach is up there where, if you've ever seen it depicted, is the astronaut house, or where the astronauts visit with their spouses. So it is the northernmost. When Artemis launched, it was at the northernmost part. You would want to be at the northern side of things to see that at least take off. You'd be closest to getting takeoff, because if you can't get on the premises with a paid pass, your closest view, and therefore your best ability to get up close pictures, would be to go to Playa Linda before they launch it, go up there, take your picture. SLC 40 is not real close to Cape Canaveral's port, but it's close. And it's close enough. The other thing about SLC 40 is that it's close to where the boosters land when the booster lands on Earth versus landing on board the drone ship. So when it's a Falcon Heavy, two of those boosters land at landing zone 1 and 2, which are close to SLC 40, which you can see easily from across the water, or you can see easily from Cape Canaveral. And if it's a southern trajectory and the booster comes back, you can actually see the rocket go up, and then you can see the booster return back and cross over your head in the sky and come back down and land. This SLC 13, Launch Complex 13 as it was originally called, is even closer to Cape Canaveral. So that means when and if I see this, I'll be closer to it. If I could actually go on March 8th, which is 3 days from now, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, probably not because I'll be at work. But if I were going to go, or if it gets delayed and doesn't go on the 8th, goes on a different day, I could probably go and be closer and see it up closer and get better pictures. But again, I don't know the size of this rocket. I'd have to see, because some of these newer rockets are smaller. So I'd have to see what the size of this rocket is. So that'd be interesting to see the size of the rocket, but just the idea that it's a 3D rocket. They called the mission "Good Luck and Have Fun" because it's a test rocket. Okay, it's a two-stage, 110-foot tall, 33-meter rocket that's 85% 3D printed, and therefore the largest 3D printed object to exist. They're working toward getting it to 95% printed. 110 foot tall. So that's exciting. At 110 feet tall, it's like a small building. Let's see though some size comparisons. The Falcon 9 is 229.6 feet tall. I can bring that on the screen. So the Falcon 9s are bigger. In meters, that's about 70 meters. Falcon 9s are 12 feet in diameter, 3.7 meters. And that gives you the weight in kilograms and pounds, the mass, and how much payload it can deliver. So Falcon 9s are bigger. The Dragon capsule is only 26.7 feet tall. But it is 13 feet in diameter, so there's an extra foot in there to work with. That's probably, because you had to have shielding and everything to protect the astronauts. This talks about the largest rockets. Number 10 would be the space shuttle at 184 feet. Energia rocket, 192 feet. The New Glenn rocket, if it's completed, is 322 feet tall. Falcon Heavies, 230. Delta IV Heavies are 236 feet tall. Ares 1 rocket, 308 feet. Long March, that's Chinese, 338 feet. Saturn V's, 363 feet. Yes, those are beasts. I wish I could have seen one of those standing on a pad up close. That would have been a beauty. You can see it displayed, mock-ups of it. Space Launch System, otherwise known as Artemis, 365 feet. And Starship rockets are the big ones, that 400 feet tall. Speaking of Starship, let's see if I can make this big. Okay, can I make this big? So SpaceX Starship, I wrote myself an email so I could get this thing. Sorry. It's getting ready for its orbital flight. A third-party source, specifically NASA Spaceflight, so that's www.nasaspaceflight.com, or you can search for them by that single word name on YouTube. You'll also find them on Twitter. They reported today a significant amount of activity around the pad area. Now, I'd love to show you their video, but if I did that, I would definitely be in copyright violation. But they talked about Booster 7 remaining at the area of installation. Booster 7 has been out on the pad. There's a specific name for the pad. I don't remember it. Please go to nasaspaceflight.com. Please check out their videos. If you don't like NASA Spaceflight, I can recommend other places where you can go get this kind of information. But SpaceX has a name for all these parts. But they said that activity exists that indicates that Starship, the ship section, is being built up, covering at it. By the way, that's one of the unique things about Starship. Starship is the rocket. It's the rocket, and it's also the rocket with the booster. It's kind of like a semi-truck, because the average person sees a semi-truck cab and says that's a semi-truck, whether there's a trailer attached to it or not. It's a semi-truck because it pulls what, when you put it together, is a semi-truck. It's not exactly a semi-truck, though. It would be like if you had a semi-truck cab, but you never ever called it a cab. Because you got the Starship, the top part, that continues on to space. You have the booster, the bottom part, the thing that boosts it off the ground, gets it out of Earth's gravitational forces and in towards orbit, and then releases and lands, comes back. But when you put the two together, it's called the Starship. It's still called the Starship. Like, for instance, you can't disassemble it. With the original Starship Enterprise, which is a whole other level that we haven't got to yet. In fact, one could say it's a little bit pretentious to call this a starship because it isn't actually going to go out and visit a star yet in its current form. But you can't blame Elon Musk for wanting to say this is something new that's ahead of its time, that's big, and I'm going to call it Starship, even though it's quote unquote not a starship like the Starship Enterprise. But you know, rockets have been this way, boosters and rockets, since rockets got big enough that they could break the Earth's gravitational forces and get themselves into orbit. They've had boosters to get where they've been going. You could maybe we could go through machinations, find instances of rockets that made it out of orbit, but without having a quote unquote booster. But those rockets would be like Explorer 1, tiny little rockets that simply got themselves out and into orbit and couldn't really carry anything other than telemetry that says, hey, beep, 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 I'm out here like Sputnik, beep, 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 and I'm in orbit. Anyway, what they're saying about Starship, activity exists which indicates Starship, the ship section part of it, is being built up and covering is added to make it ready for launch. They use more technical terms. And what they're really saying is, if you've been following this story of Starship, like I have, the incarnations of Starship that have flown to heights thus far have mostly been like, be like your geek in your house taking a car, modifying it, but leaving all of the wiring and the hoses and the stuff that modified it and made it bigger and stronger. Putting all that stuff on the outside of the wiring, you know, exposing it to the elements, being able to fly or drive it or whatever, push it to its limits, but not trying to take it out into space. You could launch a suborbital Starship and do a test on articles like SN10 and still have wires like hanging off the sides of the ship tied on. But you can't very well do that with an orbital ship. You can't take an orbital ship to orbit with things hanging all off of it. You're asking for trouble. So what they're saying is, the stuff that's been exposed thus far, when they've been doing the static tests, the engine tests, and the cryogenic tests before that, and all this stuff, is getting covered with shielding, covering. Covers are being put on. Things are going on. And they said that an umbrella of sorts is out there deployed and welding is going on. And there wasn't, what I make here in my note, so there's a 2% chance of rain today. So did they really need an umbrella today? Maybe, maybe not. Tomorrow, there's more like a 10 or 11% chance of rain in the area. So, you know, tomorrow they definitely need the umbrella. But maybe the real reason they needed the umbrella out there was to put some shade on our welder or welders while they're out there welding these parts on and preparing this ship to possibly go up this month. Possibly not that soon. There's been a lot of delays with SpaceX and the FAA and so forth with this rocket. It could be that something happens and it doesn't make it this month, or it could go this month and surprise everybody. Because as these guys on NASA Spaceflight said, it seemed like, you know, a few months ago, it was like, oh, well, this just might get up around May of this year, if we're lucky. And now it's looking more like it could actually go. So all that talk about Starship, let's share this tab instead, because that was all talk. So what is Starship, the ship part? Starship, the ship part, is the black part you see here. It's the black part that you see between the tongs, the things that act like chopsticks, and that's what they call them, the chopsticks that are holding it in place. The chopsticks are the part that, when the Starship returns, is supposed to grab a hold of the Starship. So the Starship is supposed to come down for a landing. It doesn't have any landing gear. The chopsticks are supposed to come together and grab it and hold it there. And the chopsticks move up and down this tower. So the chopsticks are also going to grab this other part before that. They're going to grab the booster section. This is the booster section. Now this is kind of faint and blurry, but you can see how it sits between there, you know, that you have this top section, the Starship section, which this very top part up here would be like the crew quarters, if it was a crew quarters type situation. And all this has to work for Artemis to be able to land a crew on the moon, because this part, this top Starship part, is what's going to land on the moon. The Space Launch System is going to launch 4 astronauts into space on Artemis 3. I think 2 of those astronauts are going to then transfer, when they dock the SLS capsule. Can I remember the name without looking it up? Anyway, when they dock that capsule with this Starship, they're going to transfer over to this Starship, and then they're going to land this Starship down on the moon in order to get to the moon. So that's the whole process. This all has to work. There also has to be versions of this to refuel this. Because again, as I said, this is not a Starship like your Starship Enterprise. There's not some wonderful, great, magical drive that has dilithium crystals and has some kind of chamber process and generates energy out of nothing and never runs out of energy unless it's damaged. This has got to have its propellant. And it's got to get its propellant by another of its kind, specifically designed to be a refueling tank coming to it and refueling it for it to get to the moon, orbit the moon, and get back. So they've got to get this thing working, flying, put up into orbit, up and working, and continue to press on. And the other thing the guys at NASA Spaceflight were saying is they could see that there were iterations of this. So this this silver and metal colored part is booster 7. They were saying there was as many as up to booster 10 parts of them being built. And I think this is Starship build 26. And I think they were saying there was up to like 28 or something like that. Again, go to nasaspaceflight.com if you want to know more, or you know, just stay tuned and watch and see what happens, because it's not gonna be too much longer that's going to fly, and hopefully it doesn't blow up. I think I got a couple. Yeah, I got a couple more coming. So I'm gonna show this week at NASA while I shuffle around a couple of things to get some things that were viewer suggestions. I've got a couple more producers submissions I've got to get in the system. Hopefully I can get them transferred over while I show you this week at NASA. So hang on. Well, that was the link to it. This is the actual video.
The next crew heads to the space station, navigating the lunar landscape, and a view to look forward to. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA. A SpaceX Dragon spacecraft launched to the International Space Station March 2nd on our SpaceX Crew 6 mission. The crew, including NASA astronauts Stephen Bowen and Woody Hoberg, will conduct research and technology demonstrations on the space station to benefit life on Earth and future Artemis human exploration missions to the Moon and eventually to Mars. In 2024, a Firefly Aerospace lunar lander will deliver a payload to the Moon called the Lunar GNSS Receiver Experiment. The payload is expected to receive signals from 2 satellite constellations orbiting Earth and obtain the first ever global navigation satellite systems fix on the lunar surface. This technology could help provide precise navigation for future exploration missions on the Moon. A new simulation shows how our Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope's wide field of view will help unveil the universe. The simulation compares several regions of the image depicting the Hubble Space Telescope's field of view with the full zoomed-out image, which represents how much more Roman is capable of surveying. The Roman Space Telescope is targeted for launch by May 2027. The NASA Aeronautics Dream With Us Design Challenge is an opportunity for middle and high school students to share their visions for the future of aviation. Student teams are being asked to develop and present plans for a more sustainable commercial aircraft. The deadline for submissions is May 15th. For more details, visit go.nasa.gov/aero-dream. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/twan.
So that's this week at NASA. That's a regular airing program on their channel. And so I put that in there this week so that we could go through those topics real quickly. Okay, we have a tweet from Major Richard Ojeda. Scale that up. Ethics Committee voted unanimously to open an investigation into George Santos. Once he is dealt with, Tennessee legislator Andy Ogles needs to be next. If the Republicans care about integrity, then they need to prove it, says Major Richard Ojeda today at 8:08 p.m. Yes, sir. Definitely, they talk about ethics all the time, but they really just need to do something. When is Artemis taking flight again? I believe it's 2025. Don't know if that's Artemis 2 or 3, but I think that is Artemis 2 because I think that's what I heard. And I would venture to guess that that is based on the expectation of all those things I mentioned earlier having to be working and functional to NASA's satisfaction. So let's see if that's true. Let me see. When is Artemis 2 launch? Okay, they're saying Artemis 2, May 2024. It's Artemis 3 that's 2025. So Artemis 3 expected 2025. They don't really give a specific launch date, but Artemis 2, what's different between Artemis 2 and Artemis 3 is Artemis 2 is simply going to get the crew out into the SLS rocket, the same kind of SLS rocket that was launched in Artemis 1. It's going to get them out into orbit. They're going to orbit the moon, but they will not land on the moon. Artemis 3 is the one that's actually going to land on the moon. So Artemis 2 proves that the crew can get there safely. And Artemis 3 is what actually, with Starship, gets them down to the moon. Okay, we got a Carrie Lake speech. Tom Nichols responds with shudder. Right Wing Watch, Carrie Lake used her speech at CPAC to declare that Steve Bannon is a modern day George Washington. I call him the patriotic stud muffin, she says. That's almost hard to believe, but yeah, I guess we're going to listen to that for 15 seconds, and we will never get those 15 seconds back.
Steve Bannon is somewhere in the crowd. Where's that patriot? There he is. I love that man. He's a modern day George Washington. I call him the patriotic stud muffin.
Unbelievable. How can you call him a George Washington at all? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, unless you're talking about George Washington's body exhumed from the grave and reanimated with the wrong brain inside. I don't know. So we have a tweet from the president. It's President Biden on Twitter. He says, no matter how hard some people try, we can't just choose, to learn what we want to know and not what we should know. We should learn everything, the good, the bad, the truth of who we are as a nation, and everyone should know the truth of Selma. That's the picture. That's the key phrases from his speech today, which we played earlier. So, okay. All right. Okay, we might be back. Let me know if we're back. We're not back. Okay, looks like we're back. Some kind of short internet outage there. I don't know if it was a forced reboot on their end or what. That was really, really unusual, but I'm glad we're back. So just a little bit of hit in the stream, I guess. Okay, so we did have a submission that I have to move possibly from my phone. So we'll see. I don't know if I got it all or not. It looks like it's trying to get it. I might have to try to. Okay, so it's there. If I'm lucky, I can I send it to? I don't remember if I logged into Facebook on my computer. I don't think I did that. I don't know if I might be on this other computer. If I am, I can get it from this computer. So if I can, I can load this Facebook submission from this computer. Just give me a minute for that. In the meantime, Nick had a question about politics and NASA. Will the Republican House fund NASA? Who decides the NASA funding? Answers the question. So this answers the question of who they get the funding. So I'm still trying to get this Facebook content in. I should have resolved that from last week. I have Facebook on this computer. I'm just not logged into it, so I may have to log into it. The main reason I'm not logged into Facebook on these computers is because of updates. Updates wiped out my saved passwords because I had to. I was having an issue with this computer, and I don't believe that this computer wants to cooperate, so I'm not going to use that computer. I'm going to have to log in. I don't remember if I logged in on Facebook here last week. I'll have to see. Okay, it says I entered the old password, so I'm gonna have to go get the password because I changed the password last week when I had so much trouble. Okay. Anyway, this first. This is a NASA article that talks about learning from. It talks about their mission, how much money they get. They're getting $32.33 billion, but they've only planned to spend $6.48 billion so far. $8.29 billion in award obligations. That's money like the money they give to SpaceX to build the Starship and all that sort of thing in order to get to their goals. Talks about how it was funded and so on. So, yeah, I'm going to have to get to that by logging in. So I'm going to have to see if I have something I can throw on to play for you, or I'm going to have to play my break video and go get my password because apparently I changed my password and forgot what I changed the new password to. Because I did have trouble logging in with my old password for whatever reason. And I may actually have to wipe out the save login to Facebook because that might be the problem. There may be some inconsistency there in the latest update that's making it not work. So let me get to Wes by getting to that. I was trying to answer Nick's question. It does talk about status of funds, but it doesn't really deal with politics. And I don't know if there is any article that actually deals with the politics and how it would affect NASA's funding. I mean, you kind of sort of know that the Republicans like national defense. They're grandstanding now for national defense because, quote unquote, Biden didn't do enough about the Chinese balloon. You can't have the national defense without NASA. That's the way it works. So let me put the break video on. Let me go get the Facebook password so we can get to Wes's video. I have a feeling it's a surprise. And I'll be right back. I'll hurry up. Hey, been working behind the scenes with my producer to get everything working here to get this video up. So hang on. Should be over in a few seconds, and if that doesn't work, then I'll do the other log into Facebook in order to make it work. So let's see. Should be there. Probably it's a big file. There it goes. Okay. And we tried playing that over here last time, but it has to be open on this in order for it to work. That's what we learned last week. So we have to open it as a file.
Estas son las mañanitas que cantaba el rey David. A las muchachas bonitas se las cantamos así. Despierta, mi bien, despierta, mira que amaneció. Ya los pajaritos cantan, la luna ya se metió. These are the little mornings of which King David would sing this song with all the pretty girls around him, and now we'll all sing along. Wake up, my loves, oh please awaken. Look out and see the morning sun. Now the little birds are singing, the time for moonlight is done. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nick. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nick. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Nick.
Happy birthday, Nick, especially from our guest musician and singer, Wes Webb. So there you go. A little bit of technical effort there to get that on, but certainly worth it. So just hang in there. And I'm about to be able to log into Facebook here in case we have to do this again. So I have to enter the code that it just sent me. It sent a code, or actually it sent me a confirmation thingy, and it's like, come on. You know, the weirdest thing about the new Facebook is that it tells you that it sent you a code, but then it tells you that it sent a thing to your device that says that you can log in. And then, of course, if you're on multiple devices, it's always the one that you didn't pick up that has the actual thing that says, is this you trying to log in? So one more second, and then I'll be logged into Facebook. And if we get another video like that, that will be good, and everything will be fine. So there it goes. It is finally logged into Facebook. So now I am prepared for future videos from Wes. Now, back to Nick's question about NASA funding. And did we have anything else that was coming in from the producer? Not over there. How about over here? No, we went through that. We went through the thing. We did that. We did that. Good. So it's Nick's question and then more questions from the audience here shortly. So can we find a reference to anyone saying anything about would the current Congress cut NASA funding? That's from April. So that's too old. That's from last year. This is from today. So this is from no, that's from last year. Never mind. So we don't want an article from last year. We want something from this year. Is this old? I'm going to bet this article is old. Okay, this is a PDF, but it doesn't probably have a date on it. No, it doesn't have a date on it. So you can't use that article because you don't know when he wrote it. I mean, there is a history, so you could go based on that. There's a question. And how old is this? That's from last year. Last year, a CNN article says Biden administration's request for NASA budget in 2023 is $26 billion, the largest request for science in the space agency's history. The figure is 8% more than the enacted federal spending levels. So he increased their funding. And then there's a thing here about NASA. And that's still from last year, but it says NASA plans to retire International Space Station at the end of 2030 and crash it into the Pacific Ocean at Point Nemo. That is one thing that I did hear today, though, on NASASpaceflight.com. They're a really good source because those guys really do put their hearts and souls. And there are ladies that work there too, don't get me wrong, but predominantly on the podcast, the voices on the podcast are usually male. But as a team of people, they do keep up with NASA very, very well. I highly recommend them. What I don't like about them is they generally don't answer questions from people that didn't send them money. But that's their right because it is their job. So that's how they make their money. So you got to pretty much super chat them in order to get an answer. Got another one here. Got a Bovert. So Bovert video or clip or story. So Nick, I'm sorry I can't really give you full detailed answer on your question. I mean, best answer is really that Congress will do what it will do, and the best way for NASA to preserve itself is to make sure it does something that the Republican Congress wants to do, so it keeps getting funded. We call that making sure to know how to sell yourself to get the money. So let's see. Washington created the Treasury Department, says Ron Filipowski. The State Department, the War Department, Attorney General Adams later created the Department of the Navy. Bobert says she's tired of hearing about ESG and DEI. I'm tired of our completely bloated and overfunded three-letter agencies. The only three letters our founded thought were necessary is USA. If the only three letters necessary were USA, then you could just stand there and go, USA, I win. You wouldn't need your gun. You wouldn't need your Second Amendment. So I know what DEI is, Drug Enforcement Agency. I don't know why. I don't know all the letters to ESG, federal government. ESG refers to the three factors that affect government's credit profile, including exposure to climate risk and other environmental factors, long-term social factors, and governance issues. Is ESG a government program? Emergency solutions grants. Well, duh, if she's talking about emergency solutions grants, she's talking about the ability to handle emergencies, like the train derailment emergency, which she and her cohort said that Biden and his cabinet didn't deal with effectively, which is a complete and total lie. Enough. Duplicitous. That's what it is. Duplicitous. Just duplicitous. Always coming up with nothing is ever right unless it's done our way attitudes. Damn, she's dumb. Yes, she is. She's really, really dumb. I think they should rename all blonde jokes to Bobert jokes, because Bobert is the one that doesn't get anything. And the other half of those jokes can be Marjorie jokes. Okay, we are 5 or 6 minutes from the end of the third hour. The counter says 2 hours and 57 minutes, so we must have lost a few minutes in there. So I'll give you a few minutes. What do we have? What do we have that we've not talked about? I know I haven't really talked too much to chat, and I haven't said hello to Jackie. So what have we not talked about? Land Before, what is that called? Land Before Time, when the screen went black. That's funny, yes. As a viewer of the American experiment, says Nick, from the north of the border, I'm only concerned that the truth and facts are not accepted by some Americans. As a resident of the United States of America, I'm just as concerned as you, if not more, because I'm stuck here. You're not. Select women to be astronauts from Congress, Marjorie and Bovee. Yeah, we can test them for the first flight of Starship to see whether it runs with them inside. But no, we shouldn't really say that. You're being mean now, Wes. You're being mean. Yeah, doesn't Border Patrol have an acronym? It was really amazing that she's tired of hearing about the Drug Enforcement Agency, because it's really kind of like her that's always talking about that sort of thing. The lights must be in a different place tonight or something, because my key is acting up, or I don't have my camera centered or something. Probably I'm sitting in a different spot. That's probably it. It's probably a centering issue. Sparkfoot and Bobblehead deserve prison for treason. You know, if I didn't want to encourage their behavior, Sportfoot and Bobblehead is a good title for a TV show. Like a ripoff of Dukes of Hazzard, except you put pictures of guns on the roof of the car. But I didn't say that, and they shouldn't do that. Yes, you would be. You'd be fine watching them rot in prison. I mean, you know, maybe a couple of people that I never thought of that. What, the parody of Dukes of Hazzard? Strangefoot and Cheerleader? Y'all are funny. Y'all are funny tonight. We had fewer people here tonight. I don't think our numbers were as high. I think that's probably because of coming on late, and that just couldn't be helped. You can't read sometimes. Oh, that's okay. You can step away as you need to. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. I'm ready to go to bed. All the hate in the world is suffocating you. Yes. Yeah, I have a feeling, Betty Loco, you're not going to want to watch the rest of Trump's speech. Just having them in a sitcom would be karma. The only way that I would really accept them being in a sitcom is if all the money made from it was used to give reparations to somebody that was injured as a result of their criminal negligence in doing what they did to encourage the attack on the Capitol. But still, it would seem like you're like martyring them and giving them something they don't need or deserve. Looks like we got a couple more topics coming in. So let's see what our producer has for us tonight. That one is a repeat. This one's a cute video for the night. I think that's the intent, is to give you a cute video to end the show on. So hang on, because we do like to give you a cute video to end the show on. Something to restore your breathing, and you can get a idea of what it's about. So here we go.
On this throne, I'm ready for
Cute. I make hours go by like minutes. It does seem that way. It does seem like I just sat down a few minutes ago. I think we should file a class action lawsuit against the orange bastard. If nothing else is done, yes. So there was I think a repeat of Bobert, because let me verify that was the same thing, that I didn't just like blink and. Okay, I see what happened. I must have. I must not have sent it to the right address. I got too many emails. That's why I didn't see a new video, and why I saw the old one, because I didn't send the right one. So let's see when it gets there. Yeah, this one's a funny one. This one's a funny one. This one is a funny one, and the hint I will give you is this is not a situation you would want to see in your house, most especially during 2020. We can argue all day about the rights and wrongs, Barbara, but it won't change the fact that we're out of toilet paper. Before you go, with love from the dude, yes. Nick Rich sends his love. Is Clementine your latest video? Y'all still there? Clementine must be Benny Loco's latest video. Yes, it's a quickie, but not in the shorts list. Weird.
Somebody help. I got a kitty on me. I got bird. Somebody help. I got a kitty on me. I got bird.
All right. Well, I try to remove that other way. We don't mind your caps lock. We got a little bit of kitty love at the end of the show. And I think I'll close it down with that, and we'll come back next week with new topics. I hope you're still enjoying the show. I hope you feel like there's still enough interaction between yourselves and me. Obviously, she traps you. Yeah. My dog used to do that. I had a dog. Like come up and trap me and like don't move. So yeah. Missed Jim tonight. Yeah, I don't know what happened with Jim. I don't know if something happened. I don't know if it's because we didn't come on at 7 and he didn't know what to do. I don't know. I didn't have time, and I haven't really for the last several weeks tried to send out emails, DMs, that sort of thing. So I don't know, So just thank you, Benny Loco. Yeah, I did get notices out on Twitter. Obviously, I created all 3 platforms. I didn't get out on the other social platforms, but I really don't think that, oh, I hate saying it that way. I really don't believe that last week's effort to get it out to the other alternatives to Twitter really brought in more people. I don't know. Maybe later on I'll just post and see, like post this video and go, hey, did you miss us? Because I didn't announce it. I really, really would like some kind of, yeah, he may not be feeling good because he had dental surgery. I really wish there was a way to like search the internet, and keep searching for it, and just get an app that says, okay, this is an app that I can pay a certain amount of money for, and just like it will take my tweet and tweet it, but it also like send it to the other alternatives to Twitter, so I don't have to like format it for each one. Yeah, I did send out the event notices or create the YouTube about a half an hour early. So that was just the way it was. So anyway, I mean, we did start an hour late tonight because of the family Zoom meeting, but that just couldn't be helped. And I would rather do a show with everything intact and all the content intact than rush to do a show and go, okay, well, I got to download this or I got to do that. I mean, it's enough to it's enough to get this stuff together. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much, mods. Thank you so much, everyone who participated tonight. And anybody who watches later on and enjoys the show, thank you for that. Spread the show around, like, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. See you soon. Good night. I will put the close on here just to give you more chat time.